What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel for some more disc golf content. This is going to be another video from our DSA match play championship for 2021. Going to be a match between Sander and Will from our round 4. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off on hole 1 with a 91-meter hyzer shot, a little gap to hit off the tee. OB left, right, and long as we watch Sander peer the gap, but it looks like his disc's just hyzering a little bit early, and he ends up actually finding the OB. Seeing as this is match play, Will just has to keep it inbounds at this point. Hangs it out a little wider, and that's more of what you want to see. Skipping up right towards the basket. So here we have Sander putting for his OB3 right now to keep any of his chances alive on this hole. And unfortunately, he just tickles chins left and doesn't connect. So at this point, Sander has a putt for 4, and Will doesn't really have to even make this putt. He just kind of gives it a safe bid, making sure that it doesn't go too far past the basket even if he misses. Sander composes himself and makes his tester putt. So right away, as Will taps in this formality here, Will is 1 up. Moving on to hole 2, we have a 109-meter hole. You have either a sidearm gap or the backhand around over the path, and Will is a predominant sidearm player, and so he's very used to throwing shots like this on this hole. Unfortunately, it does skip OB right, but I've talked to Will about it previously, and his goal is to just throw it at the basket, and if it goes OB, then he'll at least have an OB3 putt. Every once in a while they stick. So Sander, being the power backhand player he is, tries the backhand line, but just releases that one a little bit early and ends up going OB in a very tricky little spot here. And this shot right here is possibly one of the hardest spots to get up and down from on this hole, with how tight that OB is to the path. And a seemingly perfect shot just slides barely out of bounds, and you get a look of why this hole is considered one of the hardest holes in the Netherlands. And Will doesn't have necessarily a lot of pressure to make that putt. Sander taps in his 5. Will gets another easy point here on the board, putting him 2 up through 2. As you can see, these guys are dressed in some warm clothing for this cold morning of disc golf. Moving on to hole 3, we have one of the shortest holes on the course. It's a little pitch hyzer, a little over 50 meters. And Will lets it tail out a little bit too far left. Sander wants to correct off on this line with his PA2. And out of his hand, this shot looked so good. But unfortunately, just inches low from an ace. Hits the cage and actually rolls into the water. So Sander's going to be putting for 3 from the drop zone. Will tries to give this a little bit of a safe bid too. Make sure his disc doesn't go into the water if he misses the putt. And now this putt becomes really important. So Sander has to make this to tie the hole, assuming that Will makes his couple meter putt there. But he doesn't convert. A little bit of a nasty roll away too on that one. As we watch Sander trying to keep his fingers warm and just focus on his putt. He does that pretty well. And Will here to tap in another putt and take another stroke. Or point, I should say. So now we have Will 3 up through 3, moving on to hole 4, which is our first par 4, coming in at 148 meters. Will's just trying to throw a sidearm here, down the gut. Leaves that one a little low. Fortunately enough, the ground play works out for him, and he's in a perfectly fine spot. Try get up and down for a birdie. Sander's going to try correct off of this and throw it a little bit higher. But it releases that one early into the bushes. He's left with another really tricky upshot here. Just trying to bend it around that corner. I don't remember what disc this is specifically, but definitely kicks awfully far to the left, and that is a really tricky spot to be in. So at this point, Sander is throwing 3, I believe, and catches some of the trees off to the left. And this is where Will's drive landed. He's already had a little bit of pressure taken off, as Sander now needs to try to get up and down, to just compose himself, but finds one more limb to stop that from happening. So at this point, I believe Sander is throwing or trying to get up and down for a double bogey or a triple bogey. But at this point, it doesn't matter too much. There's definitely a little bit of a sense of this hole being lost already, as Will here has a par putt. And this wasn't a must make, so he's still on track to pick up another point on the board. So this is going to put Will 4 up through 4 as he taps this in. Moving on to hole 5, where Will, being the sidearm player that he is, he's just going to feast on birdies. He's going to show us why he's so good at the shot. He's calling for it to swing, but it'll skip and roll right next to the basket. And here we have Sander trying to do the same thing with his D1 Max. Maybe a little bit too much flex, but he actually ended up going a fair bit long, as we'll see in a second here. A little roll out too, putting him outside the circle. Trying to make this to tie the hole with Will being so close to the basket. The little stepper doesn't connect this time. So this is where Will's drive landed, being about 3 or 4 meters away from the basket. And Sander just tapping in this putt, trying to keep those fingers warm. So at this point, Will is 5 up through 5, going into hole 6, which is 115 meters long. Really tough hole. And Will's shot here got scary for a bit. I was tacking right. Caught some of the limbs of the back 3 trees, letting it not go OB. So Sander actually has the power to try go over the trees, and if I'm not mistaken, this is a air D2, which is a very flippy distance driver for him. Trying to crush it over. It's hard to see in the video, but it actually turns over into the woods and ends up OB. So this is where he takes his drop. That trusty P2 of his, trying to get up and down. And this basket is in a very tricky spot between two sets of bushes. You'll have lots of interesting putts from here. So now Will just has to get up and down. Try to get it close to ensure another point on the board. Sander connecting on a good putt there. Finding one of the few places where there may have been a tunnel. And this is a perfect example of how awkward this hole can get on the putting green, as Will executes. So now Will is 6 up through 6. Hole 7 is a 71-meter hole with a Mando left of that tree that you can see. And Will's trying to just hug it really tight to that tree and let his disc hyzer out towards the basket. Executes that pretty well. I believe he landed somewhere around circle 2. And Sander goes with this high backhand turnover, but just doesn't turn over quite enough. And that fades out to being outside of circle 2. But this is that range where Sander is known to be deadly with those jump putts, but this one was a little bit of a misread. And at this point, Will doesn't have a lot of pressure to make this one with Sander's jump putt going OB. As he takes the drop there, taking his meter in from the OB line. Oh, and a very tough spit out on top of that too. Strong side. Now Will here is up 7-7 already. But hole 8, we see one of the holes where Sander clearly has an advantage in terms of his backhand power. Now Will throws a perfectly fine shot. It's just so hard to really find all that power to get it around the hill and towards the basket. If you didn't see, Sander actually slipped a bit with his front foot there and lost out on a lot of power. Fortunately, he was fine, but obviously disappointed with that. And we see Will with a routine pitch up, trying to get it close to the basket. Doesn't want any stressful putts. So Sander was eyeing this one up for a bit, trying to give it kind of a safe run with his PA2. Trying to avoid that OB behind the basket. And an uncharacteristic miss. At this point, Sander was talking a bit about feeling frustrated and things weren't really going his way. He also wasn't throwing to the best of his abilities. But he'll have a chance to let some frustration out on a big drive here on hole 9. Just playing over 210 meters. And Will relying on that sidearm once again. If I'm not mistaken, Will was throwing a Pro Katana there as Sander mashes on an X2 from Prodigy. Now Will here is still about 110 meters from the basket, if I were to guess. Throws a beautiful looking sidearm flex shot. So lets one drift over really far to the left and fade back towards the basket. Sander put himself in a really tricky spot here in the woods. Anybody who's played here knows how hard it is to get up and down from here, or even find the room to swing a shot, let alone get it that close to the basket as Sander did. Getting a little glimpse of his true potential here in this little shaky round. As Will tries to give that a little bit of a safe bid from towards the back end of circle 2. And at this point, Sander's just nervously laughing it off, and it's just painful to watch, knowing how good of a player both he and Will are. I know a lot of people were expecting this match to be a pretty even race, and nobody could really predict what would happen. But here we are watching this, and Will is now 8 up through 9, trying to throw a buzz up the path. Just catches those early limbs and kind of stays short. So Sander has an opening here, a chance really capitalize, but hits that first available. And he's put into another really tricky spot where he has to get creative to even try to get up and down. As he throws a grenade over the top, and we'll get a glimpse soon of where that landed. Here's Will's upshot. If I'm not mistaken, he's throwing a Pro Discus Starry here on his sidearm. Will manages to give himself a putt. And Sander is now here putting for 3 from a really awkward angle. You can't quite see the basket, but he has to hyzer in tight around these trees. He gives it a great chance to go in, but just doesn't connect. It's a really hard shot to even execute. This is where we see Will at. Oh, just missing low barely for his par. So Will is now 8 up through 10, seeing as though they tied this hole. So there's still 1 hole left, and that will be hole 11, the deciding hole here. So this is coming in a little over 100 meters, playing our winter tee. And the goal is to just try get it to follow down the path, but Will turns one over a little bit into the reeds. Sander with the same mistake, unfortunately, and both of them just turn them over into the ground. Fortunately, not finding any water, though. But now both of them have to get up and down. Will executes that. So at this point, Sander has to beat him on the hole to keep any chance alive. So this is really a last chance to try throw it in and keep the game going. That's a really tough angle to try do it from, and they're just going to tap these out. So the score is going to be Will winning 8 up. 8 up through 11 to solidify that win there. And as a final note, we also have some bonus footage for you guys to enjoy. Huge thanks for both Will and Sander for agreeing to be filmed. Thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to tune back into my channel for some more disc golf content in the near future.